It's official.
Last week, at the time of writing this, NetherRealm dropped a trailer for the latest Kombat pack dubbed Chaos Reigns. It reveals an expansion story similar to what we saw with MK11 Aftermath, and a whole new lineup of DLC characters, and it's pretty bad. Front and center, we've got Sector and Cyrax, who continue to perpetuate the question of how much can you change a character before you can't call them the same character anymore. The original Sector and Cyrax were deeply rooted in the Lin Kuei's Cyber Initiative plotline. They ended up becoming cyborgs. These two are just wearing Iron Man-style power suits and are, naturally, gender-swapped. Guess NetherRealm decided they weren't important enough characters to keep even that intact. Next, we've got Noob Saibot, who's probably the only halfway decent addition to the roster we get in this pack. If you don't know, Noob is Bihan after being killed and resurrected as a wraith, stripped of the things that made him human to become a perfect assassin. Of course, given this game's portrayal of Bihan, there really wasn't all that much humanity to remove. He was already a cookie-cutter bad guy, to the point you have to wonder why Liu Kang even had him on his team to begin with, so you can just say that now they're going all the way with it. His design isn't too bad either. Not the best maybe, but certainly not the worst. And now, instead of sounding like Dr. Claw, he sounds like Evil Garrus. A little generic, but the MK villains have been pretty generic for a while. Next up, we have Ghostface. Clearly only here to continue the trend of horror movie fighters started all the way back in MK9 with Freddy Krueger. Only this is the most questionable one to date, since he's literally just a guy in a mask with a baby knife. Not all that much to say here. Moving on. The T-1000 is an insanely questionable choice, and no, I don't care that Robert Patrick is apparently coming back to reprise the role. The purpose of guest characters is collaboration with other companies to celebrate and promote upcoming content. In the Terminator's case in MK11, there was a new movie coming out, and on top of, Arnold is the face of the franchise, so including him made sense. In this case, not only is there nothing to correspond to the T-1000's inclusion to the roster, it makes even less sense because he was a one-off villain in the second movie, a very good villain in what's arguably the best movie in the franchise and best sequel possibly ever, but regardless, it makes the decision to include him absolutely baffling. There's nothing to tie the T-1000 to outside the game because there's nothing coming out to even promote. Well, I guess there's the Terminator anime, but guess who's not in it? The best time to include the T-1000 would have been in MK11 alongside Arnold's Terminator, a rivalry reborn. Imagine how cool that would have been. What we have now, it feels like he's just there because they still had access to the IP and couldn't come up with anything actually interesting. But speaking of Arnold, the last DLC character is another guest, and it's Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, I don't know who the hell was asking for this guy. He might have been cool in an earlier game, but here, he just feels tacked on. Plus, given Arnold's refusal to voice his guest character in the past, we can assume we'll be getting another impersonator that won't sound anywhere close to accurate, and it'll just be another massive disappointment. It's crazy how bad they managed to screw this up. They have Robert Patrick and Arnold Schwarzenegger, but only one of them is from the franchise that they went face-to-face in. How absolutely brain dead do the people planning these DLC packs have to be to make such a massive blunder and create a wasted opportunity as massive as this? Terminator 2 was one of the most beloved and iconic movies of all time, and they couldn't even give us both characters in the same game. Instead, we get Conan, who only one guy on the entire planet was asking for. So that's our roster, and it's such a massive letdown, it's actually insane. 3 completely wasted guest characters that nobody wanted, except maybe Ghostface. 2 gender swaps of classic characters that everyone on Twitter is going to bitch about being a massive improvement, and calling anyone unsatisfied with the change sexist and or racist. And Noob, whom if you're a Sub-Zero fan, well, sorry, I guess you're screwed. Unless it turns out to be an alternate timeline version, which I doubt based on the snippets of story we got in the trailer. Speaking of which, the story looks to be as much of a letdown as the new fighters. Just based on everything I'm seeing, it seems like they've transformed Havoc from an agent of genuine chaos, not allowing good or evil to gain an upper hand for the sake of his belief in doctrine, to another generic bad guy with the ability to pull off his head and beat people up with it like a zombie. Kitana says herself his only interest is in destruction, which if you think about it, was essentially Onaga's goal back in Deception. The problem with that is Havoc was actively working against Onaga, as he knew he had the power to succeed in his goal and thus worked to tip the scales away from him and back towards the endless combat that dominated the realms, what he saw as chaos. Havoc really isn't main villain material in that respect. It can work, but you have to treat the character with a level of nuance I don't see NetherRealm handling him with. I'm open to being wrong, but NetherRealm's track record speaks for itself. What's worse, it was said that each of the characters' tower endings were to be considered canon, which implied they would be followed up on in some way. But General Shao's was about him rallying an army unsatisfied with Melina's rule, and according to leaks that I've seen, it doesn't seem like the main timeline Shao will be featured at all, much less his plot followed up on. But you could just chalk that up to Kitana's ending that shows her ending the uprising before it starts. Hooray! I'm so glad they're keeping up this stupid Kitana foiling Shao thing from MK11, but I think I'll save that topic for another video. The Cyber Initiative plot seems to be completely undone, or at least completely lost its meaning. There's a mention of the Lin Kuei having lost their way, but it rings hollow when the conflict changes from abandoning your humanity to become a ruthlessly efficient, heartless cyborg without any of the qualities that make one who they are, and choosing to adopt a super suit that just enhances your physical abilities without comprising your identity. In the original timeline, the Cyber Initiative was enforced by the Grand Master as a means of ridding the Lin Kuei of treasonous thought and insubordination. You either took it willingly or unwillingly, or you were branded a traitor and forced to flee. This is what happened to Sub-Zero, the second one, and Smoke, the latter of whom was eventually captured and converted alongside Sector and Cyrax. Cyrax was eventually reprogrammed to assassinate Shao Kahn, whom was defeated before he had the chance. After that, he malfunctioned due to not receiving further orders. He was eventually recovered by the Lin Kuei, but it was clear that something had changed. Regaining memories of his former life, it was clear that cyberization had not fully wiped away his soul. Members of the Special Forces, Sonya and Jax, find and bring him back to the Outworld Investigation Agency to be repaired and have his humanity restored. Doing this, Cyrax thanked them and joined the agency as a spy. From this point on, he's a hero and fights on the forces of light in the final battle of Armageddon. There's no telling if any of that is going to be present in this game, but just judging from the trailer, it seems like the most fundamental aspect of that story, the actual cyberization process, won't even exist. That's not good, because it basically drops the story's entire premise. So now it just seems like the Lin Kuei are a bunch of assholes causing problems with Kuai Liang for literally no reason other than to do it. Very shallow, very inline for NetherRealm. It looks like there will be another confrontation between Kuai Liang and Bi-Han as Noob, but honestly, what's the point of it? They were already in conflict in the main story and had a score to settle. The Lin Kuei didn't go defunct after Bi-Han was defeated. Kuai even says that Sector and Cyrax, and presumably the rest of the clan, would remain loyal. So there was already a solid setup for a future conflict, a new take on the rivalry between the Lin Kuei and the Shirai Ryu. But no, Noob Saibot, evil Bi-Han, who was already evil. The only interesting thing to come out of this was animalities, which are going to be included in a free update as opposed to being DLC relating to the Chaos Reigns expansion, which is good but only serves to make the DLC, again, unimportant and lacking in worthwhile content to warrant a purchase. But even if people are dissatisfied with the fighters, they're probably going to get the expansion just for the story. Such is life, such is the cycle that feeds these bad decisions more and more funding to keep being made. I've been saying this for a while, but it bears repeating. I am not excited for the future of Mortal Kombat. Nothing outside of another soft reboot will satisfy me at this point. Everything is so so broken beyond repair that coming back to this franchise just reminds me of everything we used to have, and everything we lost, and how the diehards will suck off and praise everything because we shouldn't expect better from our video games. Have a good one, guys, and I'm so tired.
Outstanding.